There you go. All right. With that, Jen and I don't have anything else to add. I will turn it over to Kelly and Mike. Welcome.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Jen. We appreciate it a lot. Thanks for having us, and we're glad to be able to present today. We're doing wait for it, independence, increasing independence for individuals using AAC. And I'm Mike, but I will let Kelly introduce herself.
Click.
Nice. Our click is coordinated.
Hi, I'm Kelly FONNER. I do training and consulting in educational and assistive technologies, and I'm also an online teacher. I just came offline from a session with 2 of my students. And I don't know what I've been, as a special educator, I've had individuals with complex communication needs on my caseload for probably longer than some of you have been born. And a long time. So I'm excited to be working with Mike here today.
And Kelly, your disclosures there?
Oh, yes. And we have to give our financial and non-financial disclosures that we're receiving stipends for presenting this session for the New Hampshire project. And I know as a consultant, I receive fees for my training. And I'm also a member of the Quiet Leadership team and get residuals from the books.
All right, and I am Mike Cole. I'm a speech language pathologist in Illinois. Background experience includes working in the school setting, in self-contained settings and inclusion settings, working as an assistive technology specialist for that school district. And then for the past 10 years, I've been in private practice, focusing almost solely on augmentative and alternative communication and those with complex communication needs. And my financial disclosure, I am president of my own company, Use Your Words PC, private practice, and also receiving stipend for this presentation. Non-financial, I am currently on the American Board for Augmentative and Alternative Communication, which is an unpaid position.
Voluntold.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
But it's
so
fun.
let's get into our topic. One of the things, if you guys would so help us, is in the chat, if you could put what role you play and your position. And so we'll gear some of our examples towards those directions. I don't ever want to assume that that's an AAC session is an SLP, because what we know, at least 3 of the people that are here aren't. So middle school OT, Mike. We've got, I'll name off some. Mike can't see the chat because he's showing. We have SLP preschool to grade 3.
Okay.
A physical therapist. My gosh, we've got a team.
Yay!
A PT.
Can't wait to work with all of you.
Yeah, preschool through high school, and a speech language pathologist in middle school. All right. So, this idea of independence plays out a lot in the area of augmentative and alternative communication. Click, click.
Oops, seems like we have a slight jump in the slides here. Sorry about that.
Just a little bit.
There we go. All right, let me start here. So that was the quick introduction of why independence is wanted. And this is a fellow here who I met, and we'll start with these videos here. And you'll see a progression of 3 videos here. When I first met this fellow, he is completely nonverbal, unable to speak. He can produce some sighs and some sounds of that manner. He didn't really play or participate and interact back and forth with adults or peers. He also had a sister as well, and didn't really interact back and forth there. He was using some pictures as part of the PECS system to request items around the house, mainly food items and his pacifier for him that he was using. And so the family asked me to come in and take a look at him. And it was kind of universally accepted that we weren't ready for augmentative and alternative communication, higher levels than the picture exchange, because we weren't seeing certain things from him. And so what I did was took a look at what he was using and how he was using it, and then also took a look at where we could go. And what we could do. And we'll talk about that part of it a little bit more, about limiting any requirements or prerequisites for this individual. So this first video is how we started. The one thing he would play with is cars, and he would attend to them. And you'll see him sitting here, and we have the communication device in front of him. And this is one of the first times that he's seeing it. And you'll intentionally notice that there is actually a lot of silence in this video, which we will also talk about as part of this presentation.
Got it.
Go.
Go. Here we go. Crash. Here we go again. Crash.
All right. And so you saw him there, and we'll see him a little later on. Now this was during the trial and with speech generating device, and this is after the trial and when he has received his speech generating device. And what you'll notice, and what I came across in the first picture, is mostly everything was done kind of hand over hand with him, because he would sit there like that and not necessarily initiate or appear to be engaged with the activity. And so one of the top things that we started doing is actually removing that level of prompting and using the weighting that you saw in the first picture. And what you see here is we start to get a progression. And so here's some more play activities with him.
Here we go.
Play.
Play. Play. Oh,
No
got
touch.
it.
No touch.
Ready?
Play.
Let's play. Oh, got it. Ready?
Play.
Oh, you're playing piano?
Play.
Play the piano. You did. Did you want to
Play.
with the ball? You do. All right, here we go.
Play.
Ready, set, here we go. Let's play.
Play.
Here we go. I got it.
Play.
Time to play ball.
Toys.
Play toys. More, here we go.
Help.
Oh, help. I'll help you throw the ball.
Go.
Go.
Go. Go. Want.
Got it.
Play.
Here we go, let's play ball. Got it. Oh. Got it. Whoa. That was way up there. Got it.
Read. Read.
Read a book.
Read. Read.
I'm not sure about that one.
Play.
You want to play? Or did you want to
Read.
read? Which one?
Yellow.
Which one? Did you want to play or
Read.
read?
Play.
Play. Okay,
All right.
Here we go.
And so what you saw there was a lot of waiting and a lot of modeling to help him begin to participate and also create the expectation that he can respond and he could direct the activity. And so what you'll see here is a little later on, and here he's starting to talk about some things in his daily life.
Hi.
Good. How you doing?
Okay. All right.
Man, if I had that cheering section every time I went to the potty, you know?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
How you doing? What have you been up to?
What is
did
your
you
name?
do?
What is your name?
Watch. Lawnmower.
What is your
You
name?
like watching lawnmowers? My son does the same thing too.
This is not quite. What's your name?
You ready?
Oh, it's under
Oh, it's under
me.
me. My name is Danny.
Oh, my name is
My
Danny.
name is Danny.
Nice to meet you, Danny.
Miss Molly.
Miss Molly, where did Miss Molly go?
Goodbye.
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 Yes, we have to say goodbye to Miss Molly. What'd you do this morning?
Miss Sue.
Oh, we saw Miss Sue today. Yes, we did. Sue? Did you see what?
Lawnmower.
Oh, did you see a lawnmower? Wow. Did you get to play with the lawnmower?
Cat.
Oh, you watched. God.
Oh, when you were playing with Kayla, you said go.
Cat.
You said go.
Watch lawnmower. My name is Danny.
You were
Miss Molly. Goodbye, Miss Lawnmower. Play.
playing with. Who were you playing with?
Here.
With Kayla, yes.
Lawnmower.
Oh.
Oh.
Playing
Okay, and we'll
You played lawnmower
slow it down
with
there for right now.
Kayla?
But what you see is we gave him a bigger vocabulary of words to use, and we also followed his lead and pulled back the prompting and the hand over hand and all of those sorts of things that were going on there. And you'll notice at the beginning of the video, he initially said, watch lawnmower, which is what he wanted to talk about. What he heard was the question of what's your name, and he knew that all three of us knew his name already, and so didn't really respond to that until he was, pointed back to his device and let's get past this. But as soon as we got past that, you see he started talking about his day, his therapist that he saw, obviously still very context dependent, because you need those who know to fill in that information, but you see the amount of growth that was achieved and his independence that was increased, and it definitely puts him on a different path as he progresses his way through school. And Kelly?
Got it.
So when we think about independence, it always isn't just about, can somebody use their device without any other assistance or any other support, but it's about where is the message coming from. And I had typed into the chat while we were watching that last video as often family members and sometimes educators as well feel like their child has to perform, like performance AAC time, say your name, tell me what you did. And so part of getting people out of that process is the same as Mike worked to get them to stop taking his hand and putting the hand on the device. And it takes time to reestablish habits. And one of the habits we want to talk about as it comes to independence is this idea of autonomous communication, where the message comes from. Click, click. So autonomous communication, and I don't know how many of you can do a raise of hand if you've ever been to a pod workshop or heard of the pragmatically organized dynamic display system. I see some heads nodding yes. You could do a raise of hands, but this is something we talk about in the pod language training that's not just unique to pod, but we tend to really push it a lot, is the idea of autonomous communication, that you want your AAC communicators, no matter what age, no matter what stage of emergent communication, through to fluent communication, of being able to say what they want to say to whomever and whenever they want to say it. And that's a quote from Gail Porter, who was a speech language pathologist in Australia, and really follows and is guided by the research and the work that she does, and have influenced many of us as we look at this idea of, is true independence just that you can push a button, or is independence more about people being able to understand what you want to convey to them? Click, click. So when we look at this, one of the other practices that we have in AAC is guided by Janice Slade and her team at looking at the communication competencies. So I'm always keeping an eye out for my students of course, we're pushing on linguistic competency. That's the reason we have an AAC system with a robust vocabulary. As you saw, Mike had them move from doing things like picture exchange to doing trials with more robust vocabularies, and then using that in everyday life. So we're pushing linguistic all the time in AAC, but we also need to think about things like operational competency. So for me as a teacher, I want to make sure that my students know when to handle the volume. If we are in the at recess, or if we're in the cafeteria, I want my students to be able to know I need to have volume up for people to hear me. And maybe when we're back in the classroom or when we're in the library, that we put our volume down. Being able to do navigating, being able to be strategic in your repairs of conversation. And you need to set these kinds of things up. With some of the students that I'm working with, we work through the idea of giving a hint. You have something to tell me, and that word is not in your device. And that's a message that they actually have on their low tech and high tech system. What I want to say is not in my device. Let me give you a hint. And then we work on hinting, and we work on hinting with all those good practices of descriptive teaching. Give me a hint or a clue. And that spelling can be a repair strategy. The other thing I really work on was, we're going to be talking about, all of these components, but another thing I really work on is social aspects, and not just hello and goodbye. I have a student that has a whole section. She's a 5th grader. She's really into fun hellos and fun goodbyes. So it isn't just see you later, alligator. It's gotta go, buffalo, and out the door, dinosaur, and all the things that she finds really fun. And she uses those messages. She talks to her general ed teachers, as she talks to new parapros that might be coming in to their life, as she meets new friends in the park. And it gives people a different perspective of who she is when she has favorite things that she says to people. So where do we look for independence? Let's take a look at the wheres of it all. One of the things can guide you is the participation model. The participation model comes from Dr. David Buchelman, and Dr. Pat Miranda, as they look at how we assess the need for participation in augmentative and alternative communication. And I've used this model as a part of my assessment model and moved it around or molded it around, and talked to Dr. Pat Miranda about how we could use it for implementing. So we're not going to talk about this as an assessment model today in our time. We're going to talk about it more as an implementation planning model. So I'll have Mike change the screen and do some clicking to move through this model so that you'll see that there are 4 different areas here when we think about participation. And, you know, if I were to put that question out to you, when somebody says, I want my AAC communicator to participate more, what does that mean to you? Put that in the chat. What does participation mean to you in your role? You might have some hints from the screen. It's not a matter of being right or wrong. So some of the things that people might think of, and we'll see, I'll read some out as they come on to here. Being involved, interacting with the class. That's when we look at social participation. How much influence does this child have within the group? Are they completely influential of the whole group? Whatever you do, everybody else does. Are you actively influencing the group? Are you somewhat involved? Are you not involved? Other people have mentioned sharing their wants and needs, reaching out to peers, greater depths of thought and conversation. A lot in that area of social, but also impacted by inclusion. What some of us, when we think about participation, we think about inclusion and where you are, because where you are and who is with you is definitely an influencer of how you can communicate and what you can communicate. Somebody else says, anytime my student uses his device, he is participating. That's that look at, as I look at it, is that idea of independence. So they're starting to use it themselves and on their own. Are they completely independent? Are they independent maybe once you get them set up? Are they somebody that needs partner assistance as we're going? So you see these 3 areas, inclusion, social, and independence. Also, there are some members of our team that participation might mean academic to them and how much they participate academically. In the assessment model of using this participation first step of Buchelman and Morendis model, independence overlays the other 3 areas. How independently are you academically participating? How independently are you socially participating? How independently are you participating in inclusive environments? And that sets forth where we make our interventions. When I'm using this as an implementation planning tool, I look at independence as a completely 4th category. How independent are they with their AAC system? And we use this to set up planning and moving forward as different activities of the day. Am I thinking about their academic participation, their social participation, their independence, or where we are? And what you find is that sometimes we're all trying to push all 4 of these areas at the same time. And it's a little bit too much, because what I might be doing for a student to participate more academically might not be, pushing their independence, because they might need more support with academic information that's more difficult. Karen Erickson has that model of red, yellow, green. And we look at that idea of if something is too difficult, it's red, or if something's new, it's red. And I don't want to give a kid 2 red lights at the same time. I don't want them to be learning to be independent while we're also wanting to cognitively interact with academic material. Or for kids who are very shy socially or concerned when they're in social situations, I need to make sure that these other areas are a little bit less pressure on them while we're pushing one of them. So it's something to think about as you balance out your planning and how are you looking at this idea of autonomy.
And to dovetail off of that, the comments in the chat here, that anytime my student uses his device, he is participating, that can actually be quite the paradigm shift for some people. What you see in the first video of the young fellow that I showed you there, he was accidentally activating his device. And what happened is, and what I work with everybody to do is to respond to those activations rather than go, was that on purpose? Did he mean to do that? Let's have him do it again. Push it again, push it again. Okay, and changing that mindset to whatever he says, whatever happens, that's his participation. And in order for him to build his independence, he needs to see that his participation is making something happen, rather than after he does something, immediately having an adult come in and say, nope, this is the way you need to do it, or this is what we're looking for the answer.
Yeah, how many of us have high school age students on our caseloads that look to somebody beside them to get permission to say whatever it is that they want to say? You know, I have a student that I'm working with now that everything, even though we are been together for months now, since August, and I feel a certain comfort level, she still looks to the person beside her to, you know, can I push this? Can I say this? Because she has had a lot of prompting over time. And so all of those of us that work with her have worked at not trying to say, push it, say that, push that, say that, because she gets a lot of that on the home front. But, you know, we want to make sure that as she's going into adulthood, that's not going to, she doesn't need to have a prompter Velcroed to her all the time.
Exactly. That is one of the key giveaways that overprompting has occurred, is that looking to the side. I have kids that hover, that I affectionately refer to as the hoverers. They will put their finger right over what they think they're supposed to touch or what they might want to touch. And then they'll look to you for that last little inch, like, is this it? Is this the right answer? And we have to wait, sometimes a very long time, to start to communicate to that individual that, hey, you can have your own independent thought, and it can be right and it can be wrong, and that's half the fun. So the other key, and part of what I was talking about with the other fellow there that I started with and his team, this question comes up a lot. When do we start with an individual? And so the key to think of, and the mind shift to get into, is waiting to start an even bigger concern. Because children with severe communication deficits who receive only speech therapy often endure years of being without an effective means of communication. And by years, I mean years and years and years. In private practice, I'm coming across adults who come to me and seek assistance, who are, one individual that pops to mind is an adult with cerebral palsy, severe dysarthria, totally unintelligible, never had a communication system because it was not thought that he could, quote unquote, do a communication system. And so we did an evaluation and got him set up with eye gaze and put the communication device in front of him and started letting him communicate and started activating the words, seeing how things worked. Additionally, we had to give him time to learn the how to do it and how to activate. And especially because he needed additional steps with the way that his body worked and interacted. With his eye gaze, he needed a setting where he could activate the cell with a blink with his eyes. And so he would look around on the device, choose the cell that he wants, and then blink to activate that cell. Because the way that his body moved, if we took away that blink and just let the timer activate the cell, he activated word after word after word after word, even though it wasn't what he was trying to say. Anyway, gave this individual the communication system, got him set up with the correct access, let him try and let him speak. And lo and behold, things are coming out like, I want to go to the mall with grandpa. I really love graham crackers and coffee. And then starting to talk about his day. And then turns out he really, really enjoys reading and being read to and loves to talk about the books that he's reading. It's hard to even get through a book with him because he's immediately blurting out what he's thinking about the pages or what he's thinking about happening. So it's critical, because these individuals that don't get communication devices when they're young, we hope they meet somebody along the way who can do that. But unfortunately, more often than not, what happens is they experience a long period of time without a communication device.
Our terminology is so important. Where Mike's giving you this example of, people will say do. They are going to do their AAC. And again, that's back to AAC performance. You know, I'm going to perform this AAC moment for you and everybody's going to clap. Well, you know, I have middle school and high school kids. Nobody's throwing a party every time they push a button anymore. And so then they don't have anything to say with their device, because their motivation was not about communication. Their motivation was about reward. Right? Somebody was rewarding me to communicate, rather than the thrill of communication was being understood in any situation. So part of this mindset of independence is shifting our vocabulary and catching yourself when you say things like, he can do it. That's not what it is. It's like, man, do you want to say something? If not, we'll wait. If not, we move on until you want to. And so, we're going to keep talking about these kinds of terms that for yourself and for those that you work with, to think about, am I promoting a communication act or a physical act, like pointing, indicating, showing?
For sure. And one example here, this is actually my daughter, who is typically developing, but I am here using a communication system with her. And she's about 1 year old here, and she isn't speaking in words yet. There was one instance of about a week before where she imitated the word duck, and it appeared non-purposeful. As she was just kind of crawling around and heard somebody say duck across the room, and she said duck, 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 and hadn't said anything since. But here we are playing with some food and some donuts that she liked to play with. And I'm introducing, in this particular case, it's an iPad with 4 cells on it set up for her. And this is the first time that she is seeing it and using it and figuring out in this situation. So I'll let you watch what happens here.
Hey, can I have some?
More.
Can I have some more? Oh, I'm gonna give mommy some more. Look,
Eat.
I'm gonna eat.
All done.
All done eating.
More.
You want more?
More.
There you go.
More.
There you go. You have more. Looks like you have a donut. Ah. Oh,
More.
more. There's a fish in your food. Who put that in there?
All done. All done.
All done fish.
All done. All done. All done. All done.
All
All
done?
done. All done.
All done
All
donut.
done. More. Eat.
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 Going to eat?
Eat.
Gonna eat?
All done.
Oh,
Eat.
eat.
All done.
All done with the donut.
Eat. Eat. More.
More?
More.
Here you go. There's more. Can you
Eat.
the donut?
All done.
Okay. There we go.
Done with that donut.
More.
More donuts? Looks like you have a jelly roll. You have a jelly roll.
Eat.
Nom, 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 nom. Nom, 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 nom.
More.
my donuts?
More.
Here you go. Mmm, tastes good.
All done.
Are you all done with the donuts? All done.
All right.
Okay.
And so you saw her there. I like the clarification in the chat window. Yes, plastic food, not actual food, unfortunately for her. But you saw through the modeling on the communication device how that encouraged her to start doing it on her own. And you notice there was no correction in there. For instance, when she hit all done and then signed eat, I didn't say, oh, no, what you meant was eat. That's this one over here. Just moved right along and acknowledged her communication and said, oh, you said eat. And I modeled eat on the iPad there for her. And then you also saw her repeat, all done, all done, all done, all done, all done. And that's one of the questions we receive a lot. What do we do if somebody stims on a device? How do we stop that? The longer I've done this and the more people I've worked with on, you know, any side of, you know, the spectrum, disability, ability, the more I've realized I don't even know what stimming is. For some people, that's how they learn and how they imitate. And so what we do is apply meaning. No matter what anyone is doing, apply meaning and apply meaning and apply meaning to what he or she is saying and stating. And that is truly how we learn language and how language develops. All right, Kelly, this is one of your fellows.
So when we think about how do we get started in this idea of modeling, it isn't just with kids who direct select, but it's also what we're modeling to kids who have alternative access methods as well. You're going to see a video here from Mason, and you can find out more about Mason. His mother's very generous with putting video on their Facebook page with Mason's milestones, or on a YouTube channel called Communicating with Pod. Mason, in this video, is 9. He is very active. So you're going to see that he is in constant motion. So what sometimes might look like an agreement is really just a part of his neurosensory system. He has physical challenges in that he is going to be presented with a book that he might physically not be able to touch it with individual accuracy of his fingers, but he's listening to his mother talk to him with it. And when he has something to say, he usually reaches out and slaps an item or kind of taps at the book. This was the beginning stages of getting somebody into the process of partner assisted scanning. But his mother was using this book in all the different places that they went to and talking to him with his low-tech communication device. They are at a evening at their church, a game night at church. And so you'll see Leslie, the mom, and with Mason here.
More to say. I have an idea. Categories. Activities. Turn the page. Game. Game. What kind of game are we gonna play? What kind of game are we gonna play? Are we going to play Yahtzee? Yes. Okay. Ready?
So you see that she uses the things that are around her. She's not overly concerned that all the fringe vocabulary is not a part of his, he's got a pragmatically organized display system so that it follows the flow of conversation. So we're going to play. What are we going to play? We're going to play a game, and then just moves on with that. So, but we need to make sure that modeling begins from the idea of using AAC systems with somebody, and that it's non-expectant modeling. I have too many people that I run into that they might model and they're waiting for the child to echo or to imitate immediately, what it is that somebody's just said with the device. And we need to remember that young babies, like the baby that of Mike's that he was showing you, listen for days and days and months and year until anybody expects them to say anything. And unfortunately, I think we get very short-sighted with our augmentative and alternative communication users, that we expect them to talk with the box as soon as we put it in front of them.
And another issue with waiting is, and this is kind of a rhetorical question here, but how soon does language development begin? Right? It begins definitely when we're born, and there's evidence that it even begins in the womb, that babies can hear the voices of their moms and their dads through the womb and begin to even start to recognize sounds even as early as that. And looking at this diagram here, we can picture the word language development right in the middle there. And language development involves expressive communication, the ability to speak. It involves receptive communication, the ability to listen, to hear, to understand, to act upon information, reading, and writing. And you can see the arrows here, how all of these elements are dependent upon each other for development, okay? The ability to speak helps us with the ability to read, because we begin to say sounds, we begin to play with sounds, begin to pull apart sounds, we build our vocabularies and start to understand more and more words, which also helps us with our receptive communication, because we're able to understand more and more words. We're able to try out and speak and use words and then see what happens when we do use those words. So similar to the videos that you saw of my daughter there, she started to see what happens when she used eat, more, and all done. And then writing is also dependent upon expressive communication, literacy, and receptive communication, because this is the output and how everything, basically the conglomeration of all your skills. And so if we have an issue in one of these areas, we usually have an issue in all these areas. And if we have an issue with expressive communication and speaking, we need to give somebody access to that as early as possible. Okay, and that's one of the conversations that I have with teams and families. Well, how early, and are there any downsides to going as early as possible? Well, and what you saw there with the video with my daughter, who's typically developing, is how it encouraged her interaction, how it encouraged her to play. And she was able to engage in the activity because she was now directing the activity. And hopefully at the end, you heard her say all done by herself when that came out. And so the activity was encouraging her verbal speech as well. And the other thing that I bring to people's attention or draw focus to is, as a society, we're very, very comfortable signing with babies, right? Even typically developing babies, using sign language with our words, which is a form of augmentative and alternative communication. And so why not open up all the possibilities to individuals, even at the youngest of ages, if needed? And so research has shown that many individuals with significant disabilities continue to develop their language skills through their young adult years, which is the other side of that question. Is it too late to implement AAC? And the answer to that is no. It is never too late to learn. It's never too late to implement. That comes from kind of the thought that the brain is quote unquote done developing around the age of 21. But what's shown is that we have the ability to learn beyond the age of 21. We're here all together learning today. And so the young man that I started with, who is around age 30, he's beginning and learning to communicate. I have people on my caseload who started at even later dates, and they are learning and communicating as well. So there is no age too young or too old to look at augmentative and alternative communication and the opportunity to allow somebody to communicate.
So we've talked about what is independence. We've talked about when we start to build it. We talked about where we can do that. let's talk now. And we've been giving you some examples because it's hard for us not to talk implementation and the hows when we talk about any of this. But let's go a little bit more in depth with our remaining time with the how do we build independence. A lot is thinking about what's going on environmentally, using your natural environment. Don't make up special AAC language time. Now we're all going to pull out our devices and chat. People need to see, and not just the consumer themselves, but the people around them need to see that AAC needs to be available throughout the day, all day, even if it's just a backup system for somebody, because you in your home, there might be people that are familiar with your voice and your individualized sign language system, and they might not need to have it, but it's a great idea so that when conversation does get stuck, that it's there to turn to. You know, many of us have heard about aided language stimulation, but think about those benefits. And there's all kinds of, you know, research now from Vygotsky and other that talk about how using aided language stimulation really validates to the individual. They need to see other people communicating with their system. It also, when we use their system, it slows us down to probably the rate in which that communicator, at least at first, needs to be taking it in. It provides additional visual models and auditory models for people. It gives them that idea of what vocabulary is used. I use some kind of vocabulary at school. I use different kind of vocabulary when I'm out in the community, and they see those examples and experiences that examples. Having people use the system or a printed version of the system also sensitizes facilitators to what might be hard. A lot of times people look and they go, oh, it's a bunch of symbols. They should know what to do right away, until you start to use it yourself and get into that situation, which is really important to live that out. Click, click.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit more of the hows. How can we scaffold independence? Mike's mentioned the term prompting. So we're going to talk about that and how we can make sure that we're not over prompting, but we're using true scaffolds within the environment. You know, we look at prompting in two ways, that there are least to most invasive prompting, and the idea of most, where we're doing everything, and to least. And one of the things, at least in my work and in some of the work of people that I've followed and practices that I followed, is that we have found that with good intentions, people might start in a most to least prompting way, but that means that people have to remember to fade their prompts. Where when we work in a process of least to most, the fading is built in, where we start with the most independent use of the system and expecting that, and then we start to scaffold their communication supports. So you've got an example here, and there's more that sources that you can find from Lauren Enders and Kate Ahern, where we talk about in prompting, when we follow least to most, and even when we do most to least, we avoid physical prompting. There are too many things that people talk about with physical prompting, where if you are doing hand over hand, that the individual who you are helping is reacting more to the physical presence of your hand on theirs than they are even paying attention to what it is that you're helping them to do. So we just, in many instances, avoid physical prompting as much as possible. Now, this may change as a practice for any of you that work with kids who are deaf-blind, when we talk about hand underhand and those types of strategies. But in general, we're not taking kids' hands and slamming them on the device. You know, we want to make sure that we're pausing between the steps of any prompting hierarchy that we might be following, because we need to give that individual opportunity. I can't just like boom my way down through a bunch of prompts and expecting them at split-second response. So we need to be observational and react to what it is. You know, in that one of the very first videos that Mike had with his young student who wanted to play, one of the things when he said play, he went over to the piano rather than thinking about the ball. And Mike followed him too. Oh, play the piano. So if Mike wouldn't have paused, if he was only looking for the child either to repeat, play, or to throw the ball, you know, he would have given a whole different set of prompts. Then listening to that, seeing what the child did and reacting to it that way. We're the big people here, right? We're the people who supposedly know how to communicate. So we need to be making the adjustments, not asking our augmented communicators or our emerging communicators to make adjustments to us. So you have some examples here of least to most prompting hierarchy. This is one that comes out of the research from environmental communication teaching, where we start out with a 5-step prompting process that has least to most in it. And you'll also see some nice examples. Go ahead, Mike, on the language lab. So that's the next one. So at the AAC language lab, Jane Odom has some nice examples there of following along. And then Mike will talk about the chain of cues.
Excellent. And the chain of cues is another prompting hierarchy that comes off the website of Toby Dynavox. Again, least to most prompting hierarchy, and physical cue, you'll see down there, replace quickly with modeling. I tell people the only time I really use a physical cue is if the person or individual just doesn't know how something operates. Like if somebody truly doesn't get that I, can pull the picture off of something, or I can touch the screen and make it happen, or the book is going to flip, when I make this choice, so on and so forth. So most of the time, if I ever do that, it's for purely an operational kind of an issue, and then very quickly stopped. This is an example of a reduced prompting hierarchy that I use. So teaching, more prompting hierarchies like this to parents and families can sometimes be difficult, because you see there's a lot of steps in these prompting hierarchies. And so I simplify it for the families that I work with, and for some of the staff that I work with as well, to two choices here. For someone who's not yet independently using AAC, I will model, wait, indirect, offer which is indicating, something to say here. I might point prompt, and then I will model. And then for somebody who's more independent, I'll use waiting. And then I'll respond by either giving my thought to it, or recasting what they say through modeling on the device and expanding what they say, and then waiting again. And so that tends to be a more simplified way for individuals to look at that. Here is a video of an individual. We'll kind of go through this quickly as well. So here is somebody who is using the PEX system to communicate, and he's working on picture discrimination here. And this is when I started to join him. And what you see here is we have a picture of food on there and a picture for book. And we knew very clearly what he actually wanted, which was the food. But you'll notice that he picks book every time. And if you look at the color, which plays key here, the book is a bright red icon, and the food is a bunch of different food in one picture.
Book. There you go. You want to read the book? That's what you picked. Part-time princess and the dragon.
Okay, and what happened was he kept picking that same picture. And so the determination was there's nothing we can do here, because he can't move beyond and he can't discriminate. So you'll see him here with a speech generating device here.
He will.
Adam.
That's what you need. It's up here.
And so what you see here is that even though we had this, he still couldn't find the pictures or select on there. And so we thought about it and we said, what can we do here? What's going on? And what we started to notice is that we had some issues with some undiagnosed cortical visual impairment. And we found that he saw the color red very, very well. When we started playing with things with different colors, he would always gravitate towards the red. And then if we held up red across the room, he would lock right onto that right away, whereas he typically didn't lock onto what he was seeing across the room. And so we took a red pointer that we designed here and started using that to show him where things were on the device. And all of a sudden we got participation. So here's his mom and he by their front window.
I love when we talk. It's totally awesome. Oh, sweaty. Use your words.
Yes.
Yes. Using your words is awesome. It is awesome. Look.
Awesome, yes.
Awesome, yes. I like
Okay, and
it.
just due to time constraints, I'll shorten that a little bit. So all of a sudden we got participation from him. And you see his mom right there doing a fantastic job of modeling on the device in front of him and showing that she's using it to communicate as well, and that he could do the same with it. If we would have left him at the discrimination level of PECs, he would not have had the opportunity to communicate more. And it wouldn't have been his fault. It would have been ours for not recognizing the cortical visual issues that were there. So if prompting levels are not improving, we are the ones who need to change something, okay? The phrase of, well, he or she can't do it, or he or she is not doing it, needs to be turned around to, what are we not doing to allow he or she to do it? So we need to raise our expectations. Everybody can communicate, reevaluate the features needed of the tool that we're using, whether it's light, mid, or high tech. Observe facilitator usage. A lot of times implementation, which we won't talk here today, but implementation is the big issue for how we do and use things. So Kelly?
All right, so in our last minute or two here, let's talk about part of being independent is expanding and getting kids beyond kind of one-word talkers. So some of the ways that we can do that are by using descriptive feedback. When somebody says something with their communication system, we don't do rewarding behavior like good talking, good job, good pushing your button. That means nothing. That's like getting a star on a reward chart. Instead, you want to give more information to it. And if you can model that on their system, all the better. So if they say Buzz Lightyear, I might say, I like Buzz Lightyear. Let's see Buzz Lightyear. Let's get Buzz Lightyear. So giving them more feedback on what they've said, rather than always confirming. Descriptive feedback is not asking them, did you mean to say Buzz Lightyear? But it lets them know that you heard them and that you're a part of their conversation, and you can give that opportunity to expand what they said.
All right, and here's another video, but I think we'll skip ahead here.
So some of the things thinking of, and you'll see some more of my videos. I've got some videos of my students on a YouTube channel. If you just do a search on my name on YouTube, you'll find some of my students, and they're using their different systems to communicate during our online school activities. Because I know we need to wrap up.
Mm-hmm.
So part of independence, a big part of independence, is making sure that we aren't trying to come in too low in our expectations, that we really are presuming that potential that everybody can learn to be a communicator. Then we need to give them opportunities in which they can show not just what they know, but opportunities to shine in activities where maybe you haven't practiced them before. And that we need to let go of our control over their use of AAC by allowing them to make mistakes, right? So we want to make sure that it's not a mistake to say something different than what was expected. Maybe that was fully intentional. And so we need to get away from this idea that AAC is right or wrong, you know, that you are answering something correctly. If you were corrected or confirmed with everything that you voiced, you would shut down as a communicator. And unfortunately, that's what we see with a lot of our older AAC users, that they get turned off to AAC systems because people have overanalyzed everything that has come out of their electronic voice. Other things, Mike?
I think that is pretty good, Kelly. We maybe do have a minute if you'd like to. Would you like to review one of these?
Sure. So this is my student, Creedy. She uses an eye gaze system. She has both a low tech and a high tech system. She uses the grid with partner assisted scanning. She uses the grid through eye gaze with a pod system. So we'll take a little look at her and let's play it a little bit, and then I'm going to have Mike pause it.
Okay.
So this is an example of giving a hint. Oh, go back. You have something new on your shirt. You, more to say, I'm telling you something. Categories, animals.
The word's not my device. I'll give you a hint.
Oh,
So Mike,
the
pause.
word is not on my device. I'll give you a
The
hint.
word's not my device.
Okay,
I'll
you
give you a
tell
hint.
me. I'm good. I'm staying at the animal page.
Mike, can you pause?
Give me.
Yep.
I will take any hint that you
Right there.
give me. I'm so excited. I'm a little excited. But this, she and her mother, her mother's with her there, and she's in an entirely different state than I am. You don't see her electronic system. Her electronic system is in front of her. The printed system that you see is what I'm modeling from her vocabulary, from a printed based system that's similar to her electronic system. But we have been modeling for months. It's not in my device, I'll give you a hint. And this is the first time that she used it on her own, independently, in context, because she knew she didn't have the word toucan on her shirt. And I was asking her, I'm like, what's on that shirt? And it was a new shirt. I wasn't like making this up or anything. But we were looking at what are the ways that you can give people hints. And I know that we are quickly running out of time, but we'll go through a sequence of, she's going to give me an animal, that it's a bird, what color the bird is, and then we go into spelling.
Excellent. And the key takeaway is, again, those high expectations and low standards. We don't expect typically developing children to answer the right answers, to imitate us, to say everything that we want to say. And we can't put those high standards on individuals using augmentative and alternative communication, because already we're aiming for a level higher than we would even expect a typically developing child to do. And so, Kelly, I'll let you close here.
So we've got some citations for you. And just to remember that every day gives you a new opportunity, right? Every day is a possibility. And we want to throw it back to you and see if you have any questions or comments to add. And then we'll turn it over here to Mike and Jen. Thanks, everyone, for having us.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, guys. That was fantastic. Now I know why Jen was so excited to see this at ATIA, and I was so mad I missed it. It was excellent. Jen wrote in the chat, every word is gold, and I agree. It was so good. I purposely kept my camera off, but know that I have a neck injury from just nodding my head the whole time. I'm like, yes, yes. I'm sitting over here saying that out loud. The dog's looking at me like, what is happening over there? But excellent stuff. Anybody questions that you'd like to ask while Kelly and Mike are still here?
Go ahead,
So
Tammy. Kieran and Isabel will probably have the same questions because we all work with the same student. And the question, so I'm the PT, Kieran's our speech person. And the question I keep having for the student that we work with who's using AAC, now every word that you've said here is something we're going to pass on. Actually, we might have have them watch your video because we've said it. Please don't overprompt. Please don't overprompt. Please don't overprompt. Please do not move his hand to exactly the thing you think he should answer. Please listen to him so we've done all of that. And I, as the PT, am always sort of naive to this question, which is, so the student knows how to get through 3 screens to talk about what he likes, which is his spinny toy. So he can go from home to, I forget what the 3 steps are, but it takes 3 separate pages to get to spinny wheel, spinny wheel, spinny wheel, spinny wheel. And I'm never certain because I want to support his engagement in a conversation. So I start with going, oh, I love the spinny wheel too, but gosh, we don't have time for that right now. We need to walk to the door. What do I do next?
So,
Yeah.
I mean, you'll probably get a response from both of us. Part of it is that idea of descriptive. So you're saying that, are you modeling it on his system?
I am trying to learn how to. Yeah, that is. So that's the first thing is me trying to go, you know what, Trist, or sorry, you know what, T, I need to find out how to say, and that's my other question too. Do I then say?
Have him show you. He may know where those words are, right? So help Mrs. Or whether you Mrs. Tammy or Miss Tammy.
Yeah.
Help Miss Tammy say this. I like spinny thing, or spinny thing is fun.
I don't think
I'm always pushing it that way.
I think we often think he's requesting it because what he would choose is to be playing with the spinny toy all day long, but it's not a choice right now.
Got it.
So I'm always torn between that. Yes, I want to support your language, but I can't just give you a spinny toy for 6 hours out of the day because you keep asking for spinny toy.
For sure. And so, yeah, one of the things is what do we do if we keep asking for the same thing over and over and over and over again, right? And what I coach my families and my teams at school to do is to, of course, initially respond to it, right? So he or she can see the reaction and see what they get and see what they communicated. But then you also start to shape it towards, how would you respond to any student that kept asking for something repeatedly, right? And so what I would do is model back. Oh, you like the spinny toy. I get it. You know what? We have to go to lunch right now, or we have to, do this, whatever it is that we're doing. And then I also pair that too, which is really helpful sometimes, is just with a visual schedule itself. And so that you can see, here's what we're doing and here's where you get your spinny toy, that sort of thing. But replying to him on his device with, that's great, I hear you, you love it. This is what we have to do right now. Or if it is a time, you know what, we have a break. Here's your spinny toy. Or first we'll do this and then here's your spinny toy. So responding and modeling on the whatever communication tool he's using is really helpful, because a lot of times what happens at the beginning, we've narrowed it down to something we really like, the student using the device, and then because we're attending to it now we get to see the other areas of the device and the other words and the other language that is on there by you modeling it. And we don't expect responses right away, of course, from him, right? Because it's going to take lots and lots of modeling. So it's going to take lots and lots of asking for that spinny toy, right? And you modeling and replying back, and then also using those additional visual supports like the schedule or first then visual or something like that.
And so I'm going to model a sentence on the device like I would a spoken thing. So yes, I like the spinny toy too. It's time to go to PT.
Yeah.
Or
so modeling wise,
it's time for.
Yeah. So modeling wise on the child's communication system, and Kelly, you can jump in here too after me, maybe if you have another thought about it. But what I encourage people to do is to model at his or her language level, and plus maybe 1 or 2 words above.
So the same we would, my other job outside of schools is early intervention. So the same way that I would model sign and verbal language to my, like at that same 1 word more than they're saying. I can do that in sign and vocal. I just haven't had as much experience with a device. So I am not fluent at all at using a device, and I look.
But that's okay.
I laughed with them the other day. I was like, so I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah.
I'm learning.
Yeah.
It's okay.
We'll have a good laugh together, buddy.
The time that it's going to take you to say just like spinny toy, he needs to see that and see that you want to be interactive with him. So do not worry about your level of competence. You will learn, we all learn the best by doing.
Yeah.
And so by you talking with him, you're going to learn pattern phrases as well. But don't worry about saying whole sentences. As Mike said, he's not there yet. So model at his language +1.
Okay.
You know, so if he just says
that I
spinning
can
toy,
remember.
then we're like spinning toy. And then also, as Mike said, with my students that are very perseverative over certain items, you know, we've got a visual schedule. Okay, here's the spinning toy. You've asked for it this many times, or we, you know, and then once they've asked for it the 5 times, that's it. And there's a visual of it. Or we go the opposite way of there are 5 things you need to do before you get the spinning toy. You know, so we know you want the spinny toy. We put that right on the reward card. And then now we're going to physical therapy. Walking down the hallway, you get a check. You know, going and doing the first activity in physical therapy is the check. And then one other thing, and you get the check. Now we take a minute break.
Yeah.
Play with the spinny
I'd say
toy.
he's a first then. Like he's
There you go.
walk
But
to
I
the
think-
door, spinny toy.
I think, Tammy,
Perfect.
that's what we're missing. Like, this is a kiddo. We don't have a visual schedule for him because
No.
we do it for him, right? So maybe we need to take that step back and give him that visual.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank
I mean,
you. I
many
truly
kids
appreciate that.
verbal is in and out. You know, all the directions that we give them, they're so bombarded by
Mhm.
verbal directions that it's adding the visual. Kieran, you used the term step back. We're adding the visual structure. How many of us use the calendar, visual calendar on our phone? I don't think of that as a step back because I can't remember my calendar. You know, I'm looking at a visual calendar. So those are things that we add to enhance them understanding what the expectations are and where we're at.
Right. I meant like step back as the adults and allow him to take
Yeah.
like more responsibility
Exactly.
of his day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
schedules are a great way to build independence
We
because
do
it
it
takes
for
it off
other
of
ones.
you.
I don't know why
Yes.
I didn't.
Well,
I
a
do
lot
it
of
at
times-
home, actually, even with my own kids who are typically developing.
Mhm.
I got super tired of telling them 10, 15, 20 times to, you know, get ready in the morning. You need your folder, you need your lunch, you need your water bottle, you need your,
Yeah.
you know, I even put up task strips for my own kids who are typically developing, and lo and behold, backpacks all packed and I don't even have to say anything.
Yeah,
Right.
I did that for my kids for both bedtime and off to
There
school.
you go.
I'm sick of telling you to brush your teeth. Go look at the schedule. It's on the fridge.
Anymore. So exactly.
They're
So we need
bigger
to
now.
carry,
At 15
carry
and
those
13,
things
they
over.
finally have it, but at 8 they did not.
Excellent. I totally feel your pain on that one. But yeah, we do that for, you know, everybody. And so why not for this guy too? Because it does build that independence where it takes it off of you having to direct. And, you know, as a child, I would love not to have adults directing me every second of my day.
Right.
Awesome.
Right. And I think he's too dependent on that
Mhm.
right now. So thank you.
Welcome.
Great food for thought. I loved it. Thank you.
I love it as you guys kind of work through that in real time with us during that. That was really great. I enjoyed that. That's fun. Good. I'm glad you got some plan to kind of move forward with that. That's awesome. Anything else? I appreciate everybody staying a little later. This is great. Mike, Kelly, thank you so much.
Of course.
Any other questions or thoughts before we shut it down for the afternoon?
This is a big question, but I see one in the chat about a reasonable IEP goal for a preschooler just starting with AAC.
Ooh.
There's
So
a
that
wonderful
was-
set of IEP goals for beginning augmentative communicators.
I was
That's
betting you
on
would have a
Linda
good
Burkhart's
resource.
website.
On which
So-
website?
It's Linda. I'll put it in the chat. Linda
Okay,
Burkhart,
Thanks.
and it it works for all kinds of communication systems, but she builds it up from just starting from aided language stimulation and she gives you examples. In fact, why don't I'll talk about it. Maybe Mike has another answer, but
Sure.
I'll go to the website and show it to you. She has the data collection to go along with it, how you put it in as measurables into the IEP. She's really thought a lot of this out. And kudos to her, because most of it's been thought out because she's been in court cases with it, right? When people have really asked about what are we doing and how can we validate the adults, where some people see it's just the adults using the system and they're not requiring anything from the child. But we start to do, as Mike was saying, observables and build upon that.
Exactly. And as a speech language pathologist myself, my goals follow language development regardless of the communication system. Okay, so I'm looking at, Brown's grammatical morphemes, and, are we saying individual words yet? Are we starting to combine words? Are we starting to add present progressive ing? Are we starting to add plural s? Are we at the point of just taking turns and just responding during an interaction, similar to a child who is babbling and waiting his or her turn back? We can't underestimate the importance of babbling on a communication system. We just a lot of times don't recognize that it's happening, because if somebody touches a communication board or device or eye gazes something, their babbling comes out as words, right? And so we kind of react to it as words versus a verbal child who might be starting to babble and go, and we go, yay, oh, look at that, you did want that. Okay, here's the donut, here's the, the whatever along the way. And so our goals for AAC should mimic language development. And so we need to make sure that we're following that kind of as an SLP. This is something I did at the beginning. Because there was a communication tool in front of this person, the focus was on the tool. But really, the tool is just the means to develop language. So language development goals are what is needed.
Well, as a PT, I definitely follow that as far as mobility, movement, positioning, all that. But I think as a PT, a couple of the schools I go to, it seems like somehow AAC falls into stuff that people who carry big equipment around should be starting. And I'm not a speech therapist, so I'm just trying to find ways that I can politely just say, hey, I found this great resource for goal writing that might take some of that anxiety away from people who understand language development, but maybe not putting that, thinking about it the same way as with a child who's nonverbal or has some motor issues. So that's why I asked the question. I know there isn't a how to do this because it's very complicated, but I definitely understand that it should go right along with where they are with their language development. So that'd be really helpful.
Certainly.
So this is the Linda Burkhart. So this is her website, and then you click on handouts over here, and people use this a lot, so it's right near the top of her handouts. And you'll see the first couple of pages. This is like a 20-page document. But the first couple of pages are background information. And then I think it's around page 8 or 9. And get down there. You'll start to see that she'll give you ways of doing language sampling that you can share with those on your team. Let me get go. I'm almost there. But she'll set up. Here we go. So here, for example, is the lowest level goal. The child, whatever, Mason, will show increasing interest and attention to someone using an aided language communication system. It doesn't matter what AAC device you put here, to talk to him or her in natural context throughout the day. This will be observed as increases in, right? And so it gives you that, and that leads to your data collection, right? So how many opportunities? For me, sometimes these goals are there for staff, to make sure that staff are actually offering the opportunities. So if I'm saying that a minimum of 10 opportunities a day, staff have to give that 10 opportunities. So it gets them into that position that they're a part of the goal, that it isn't just what the child does. And then we look to see, does the child attend? And then how did that happen? And then she breaks it down, and adds benchmarks to those goals. But that's kind of a really entry level for any AAC system.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. And so you'll see other kinds of examples, and then starting to, again, we're back using it receptively. but maybe the impact of the AAC system in their world is decreasing challenging behaviors. So here might be an example of how to write that type of a goal, and how do I measure that, right? So you'll see some really great examples there.
And Kelly, I'll share my screen here really quick as well.
Yeah.
All right. This is another tool that I use, and I put a link to it in the chat box here, is the AAC Dynamic Goals Grid on the screens there. And it goes through all the areas of communicative competency. So we mentioned that on one of our slides. So it starts out, here's the linguistic competency, and it looks at whether your user is an emergent communicator, an emergent transitional communicator, context dependent, transitional independent, and an independent communicator, and gives goals right down this sequence. And it goes into the other areas like operational competency. How are we able to use the communication system? Can we transport it, position it appropriately, locate words in there? And so this is another resource here, it goes into the social competency in here, and then the strategic competency as well. So you have the 4 areas of competency broken down for you, and then broken down by developmental level. So this is another resource that I posted for you in the chat.
Super, thank you. That's great. Thanks a lot. I will definitely share that.
Certainly.
I definitely will share that.
Yeah, those are awesome. Both those links are directly in the chat. Kelly, that PDF I put in there was the PDF of what you showed.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so that's in there too.
We also added these to our Google Classroom for those of you that are joined us that are in the project with us too.
Oh, nice.
Thanks so much.
Awesome. Look at us. So efficient. Scary efficient.
Yeah, really. Wow.
Love it.
The picture of efficiency.
A picture. Oh, if I'm only the picture of efficiency, we all have problems. Any other questions before we wrap up? This was great. I appreciate you guys staying longer. Mike, I see you have somebody waiting in the lobby for another meeting.
Certainly. Yes. For sure. They're banging the door.
I see them banging on the wall a little bit of your computer. We will post this recording up to our Google Classroom. We'll post it up to our website as well so people can get to it. And thank you so much, Kelly, Mike, appreciate the time. It was wonderful. Everybody who joined us, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Everyone, thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.